everyone. My name is Brianna Billings. This is my final presentation, Ringu and Japanese culture. So a little introduction. I chose to look at the film Ringu, directed by Hideo Nakata in 1998. That was and is a Japanese horror style film that has several allusions to Japanese cultural themes and ideas. Ringu is a Japanese film adaptation of the original novel Ringu by Koji Suzuki, which was published in 1991, and is the original to the very popular Western film remake titled The Ring, which was directed and came out in 2002, along with many other Ring 2, 3, 4, I'm pretty sure there's like a dozen, but you get the story. The storyline of Ringu follows a journalist, Riku Asakawa, as she tries to unpack the mystery behind a series of deaths that have occurred, and specifically the rumors behind the cause of those deaths being a cursed video that all of the victims watched. In Asakawa's research, she ends up actually watching the cursed video and has a week to end the curse or end up with the same fate as the others. So let's get into looking at some sources that I looked at to unpack this film. The first source I have is a book titled Scary Screen, Media Anxiety in the Ring, edited by Kristen Lacefield. This source dives into the deeper implications of Ringu as strictly a piece of media and the analysis that emerged partly from the transformation and remake of the film from the original novel Ringu by Koji Suzuki, and how this storyline presents itself on the screen. There are clear cultural characteristics that come out in specifically Ringu and Japanese horror style films. Lacefield mentions two Japanese cultural films, kanji and kabuki, and in Ringu, the use of kanji in the video pertains to the flattened, depthless nature of artistic presentation of Japanese art forms, including the cinema. The video in Ringu works to achieve the same kind of fragmentation of the signifier that was popular throughout Japan until the 1930s. The flattening of the cinema screen affects the three-dimensionality of on-screen space. Compositional space does not correspond to its actual equivalent in real everyday space. This is an effect that Japanese cinema shares with kabuki, which appeals predominantly to the senses of the viewer. And as we've seen throughout several films that we've watched in the semester, Japanese films utilize spatial meaning. It's an artistic choice to distort spaces purposefully in a film to add different elements to the story and make different messages and reasonings behind those spaces. And the particular scenes that Lacefield's exploring in this cultural term and the relation to them is part of the book and the film that is the curse that's haunting everybody that watches it. The curse video is a quick, less than 1 minute, confusing set of flashes. It's a circle of light, a man's face, a woman brushing her hair, people crawling, an eye, and a well. And this idea that Lacefield mentioned, the fragmentation of the signifier, is extremely representative during these shots. The message is unclear because it is so quick and short to both the characters within the film that are watching it and the audience watching it as the characters watch it. So I've attached a link to the video of the curse so that we can all watch and be confused together and watch a curse. was fun. So let's just keep that in mind as we keep going throughout these next couple of sources. The second source I looked at was this published work by Danielle Riches called Beyond the Grave, Shinto and Buddhist Influences in Japanese Horror Films and Manga. And this was Riches looking into several cultural symbols that influence parts of Japan and Japanese art, including cinema. So included in Rich's research were some case studies into Shinto shrine gates, depictions of ghosts, symbols of Buddhism, and even a depiction of Oiya that's seen as a female spirit that inspired the film Ringu's antagonist. And from Rich's findings, many works of Japanese horror feature spirits who have been murdered and long for vengeance. On examination, the brutal nature of their death and the treatment of their corpses, often being dumped or hidden, are found to be uniquely religious concerns. It is through the study of Shinto and Buddhist influences, as seen explicitly in Japanese horror, that we can achieve a deeper understanding and respect for the complex nature of Japanese culture, religions, and arts. So we could see that the symbols that are so popular in Japanese films, and even more Japanese horror-style films, have direct traces to their religious places of birth. Buddhism in Japan carries clear ideas of karmic action and afterlife, while Shinto images show the difference between the sacred and the non. And from the sources I've read and in relation to issues we've looked at already in class, Japanese horror concretely plays with this idea of vengeful women coming back to haunt after a brutal, unjust death. And as Riches mentions, Ringu specifically shaped and drew inspiration from a symbolic female spirit to form the story's antagonist. And even using the source that I looked at previously from Lacefield's work, The Scary Screen, Media Anxiety, and The Ring, Lacefield mentions this gendered phenomenon where in Ringu there's a double articulation of cinematic gaze at the tape by the female protagonist and from the tape by the female protagonist. Thus, the gazes of the women and the monster identify with each other as articulations of potential threats to patriarchal order. So, clearly, in this film and in Japanese film, there are allusions towards religion, but there are also societal gender norms that are being looked at. And my third source, Visual Aesthetics and Ways of Seeing, comparing Ringu and The Ring by Valerie Wee. In Ringu, the natural and supernatural worlds coexist, just as light and dark and empty and full spaces coexist in the images of the videotape, reflecting the Japanese belief in the existence of the occult spirit world and the acceptance that spirits can cross the permeable boundaries separating the spiritual and physical realms, a view embraced by dominant Japanese religions, including Buddhism and Shinto. So the entire premise of Ringu the film is based on an unexplainable otherworldly situation that cannot be questioned with logic or spelled out perfectly, but it is still believed in. And this actually leads directly into one of my connections to what we've looked at in class already, which would be the film we watched, Occults, directed by Koji Shirashi in 2009. So Ringu and Valerie Wee's work that we just looked at reminded me of Occult, because they are both Occult and Ringu are Japanese horror style films, while Occult is a mockumentary and Ringu is not, But throughout both films, we see this unexplainable and otherworldly situation that most definitely allude to the spirit world. And it's very clear that this is a large part of Japanese culture that's accepted, but sometimes frightening, as we just looked at in Wee's work of the source I just had. And also, even in that less than 1 minute clip that we watched, these symbols seem very relative to occult's symbols that came up flashing. I just saw a lot of similarities between the two. And then my second connection to class that we've looked at was this reading that came really early on, Zen in Japanese Culture, by Daisetsu Suzuki. And in Ringu, the plot most definitely was built on generational ideas. So not only was the curse being passed through by a living timeline, but the curse brought the past and present together, which directly also relates to the overarching theme of our course. The idea of vengeance and karmic actions from Buddhism are drawn out to show that our past are directly impacted by the present and the future. So, from this reading, Shinto and Buddhist influences on Japanese culture, I took this part out: one is all and all is one, because just like this circle connecting, the curse in Ringu is connecting all generations together in a cycle, in a circle. And here's my works cited. Thanks for watching. I hope it was